This is an SOS distress call from the mining ship Red Dwarf. The crew are dead, killed by a radiation leak. The only survivors are Dave Lister, who was in suspended animation during the disaster, and his pregnant cat, who was safely sealed in the hold. Revived 3 million years later, Lister's only companions are a life form who evolved from his cat, and Arnold Rimmer, a hologram simulation of one of the dead crew. The most interesting event that happened recently was that Lee pretended he passed the chef's exam, although really, he failed. That gives you some idea of how truly exciting some days can be around here. What's up, Smegheads? Welcome to episode 4 of Thanks for the Memory, a Red Dwarf podcast where we rewatch every episode of the BBC comedy show Red Dwarf and discuss them. And on this episode, we're talking about episode 4, Waiting for God, which originally aired in the UK on March 7th, 1988. I'm a theater guy, so I love a good title. You know what this is title's based off of, right, Lee?
Waiting for Godot?
Yes. Okay, good. All right. There we go.
I only heard of that because Tracy talks about it all the time. I don't actually know what it is. I'm not that well read.
Don't let anybody know. We'll cut that part out of the pod. They'll think you're brilliant. In this episode, Lister learns he is the mythical cat god of cat's people known as Cloister the Stupid, and Red Dwarf stumbles upon a Red Dwarf garbage capsule as Rimmer thinks it's a stasis capsule carrying a dormant alien woman.
This episode is such a strange one because I feel like the overarching story for this episode is kind of flimsy, but it's hilarious.
Oh, by the way, I'm Blake.
Yes.
And I already said your name, Lee. We really got to make sure we put our intros in the beginning script.
Look, if you don't know who we are by now, go back and listen to the last 3. It's fine.
It's true. Hey, look, they don't reintroduce you to everything. Well, I guess kind of Holly does in the beginning of every episode. Let's say Red Dwarf does it. Oh, wait, there is a recap at the beginning, isn't there? Yeah, this episode in particular, like, do you feel like this is we keep saying this, but more and more of what the show will become is crystallized? Yeah.
I don't think the story writing on this episode is as strong, but that being said, the comedy makes up for it.
Yes. The character work is great.
Yes. Yeah. Without a doubt.
And you get all the relationships built. And something we've been kind of complaining about in the previous episodes is not necessarily feeling like part of the crew, but the cat feels like part of the show.
Yes.
He's driving a main plot line through.
Without a doubt.
And, our previous episode, we talked about these episodes are 30 minutes long compared to what I was used to in the States at 22 minutes for a sitcom. And how there's just more that can happen. And to be honest, both the pod that the Red Dwarf discovers and the whole Lister cat god thing would probably just be one of the storylines in the States, right? But they do kind of get their own attention. And you remember I had mentioned how my memory of this show feels bigger than 6 episodes per season.
Right.
This episode is a perfect example. When I first rewatched it, I was like, oh my God, these 2 things are in the same episode.
So in your head, you'd separated them off.
Yes.
As 2 separate episodes, but they're not. Okay.
Yeah, like in my brain, completely separate. This whole idea, even though the garbage pod is that Rimmer is investigating is, let's say, 35% of the episode to the 65%.
It's the subplot
of the rest
to
of
the main plot.
But it is so good.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, we'll get there. There's a line I love. I love how invested Rimmer is in finding this pod. It's just how Rimmer is in this is how excited I get over certain things, and I can completely see myself in Rimmer at this point. It's so good.
I love that. That makes me very happy to hear. And I wonder if we're close on some of our favorite jokes and lines, if that will line up on this.
There's a one in here, so I'll lay it out, but we'll get into it later. When Lister has the cat book and he's learning to read, and the book is, so instead of writing stories, cat put smells down on the page and you have to read them. Right? There's a joke, and Tracy actually brought it up, and it's hilarious. Because, I was like, I'm putting that down, but she said, make sure you give me credit for that.
Well, this episode, The Waiting for God, we are talking about the god of the cat people. And so we've kind of said this, each of the previous episodes have really established a core lore.
Yeah.
We have learned that Cat's people were, evolved from Lister's pregnant cat that was on the ship, but we really haven't gotten any clue other than a surface level of what are the cat people.
Yeah, and I think it's been mentioned though, hasn't it, that about Cloister the Stupid. I think that's been a little bit mentioned in the first 2 episodes, but not to the extent that it is in this one.
Yes, it's dropped, I believe. I think the Cloister is dropped, but like as far as the details of how this gets is pretty huge.
Which is weird, by the way. Yeah, it's so strange. The whole cat Bible is very strange. I'm sure we'll get to it later. It's very odd.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I just saw this again this morning, but I sometimes mix up my cat moments. How does this episode kick off? What's our beginning thing?
Isn't it Rimmer on the bridge getting Holly to give him access to the ship's, the captain's comments on the ship's crew? And he's like, you don't have that authorization, Arnold. And he's like, well, let's see if the captain comes back from the dead in 30 seconds. If he's not here, we'll assume I'm in charge. No.
I love it. And then the whole readout of, is Rimmer's like, opportunity for promotion, comical.
Yes, I love, there's a line in here I use sometimes. It's funny when he says he constantly fails the engineering exam. It's like, constantly? That's a bit of a stretch. It's like if someone ate lamb 11 times in their lifetime, you wouldn't say they constantly eat lamb.
His downplaying of how bad he is constantly is amazing.
So good.
And his whole loving Captain Hollister, because Captain Hollister kind of trashes Lister, so he's like, oh, what a brilliant guy, such good observations. Then of course he does his and is like, he's a whatever.
Yeah, I never liked him.
Is that where our Goit turn? Where does Goit drop in this episode again?
Not there. I think what does he call him there?
We messed up, Lee. We should have had like a Goit counter from
we
the beginning for every episode. But this, kind of bouncing off the previous episode, again, we are just like totally solidifying that. What did I write down here? Well, this was part of my characters that stand out. Obviously, I think we probably both agree the cat is probably the big one.
Really? I expected you to go somewhere else just purely because there's a character in this episode.
Oh, I was tempted. Don't get me wrong. But Rimmer, I wrote down, and I think I just got to change my whole characters to stand out and just actually write a note for each of the crew member, because that tends to be what I end up doing. What I wrote for Rimmer is this episode solidifies that nothing is funnier than Rimmer's hopes and dreams being completely destroyed in front of him. His enthusiastic pursuit of being important becomes such a cornerstone of like who he is, so that you don't feel bad at seeing his failures. I love it.
That whole garbage pod thing is hilarious.
And what's weird, he's like a terrible person, yet he probably walks out the most lovable character that people love.
Yeah.
Even though he's completely insufferable. But everybody loves him.
Because he's that character of, he'll have human moments, but then completely ruins it by the end.
Yeah, he just like shoots himself in the foot
every
constantly.
Time. Yes, how are we not going to talk about Talkie Toaster? I know how much you love Talkie Toaster, Blaine.
Yeah. We're getting there because he's starting to have conversations about like, I don't know, I toast, therefore I am, but now maybe I need to get into something different. And like his whole existential crisis that Talkie Toaster is having about everything in his life. I friggin' love it. And then it comes out of nowhere with Lister's doing what? Oh, well, he's reading the cat book.
He asks Holly to translate the cat Bible.
And that's the whole, piece of toast? No. I don't want a piece of toast. And right now, what I also love is I know where Lister's just woken up from stasis. We haven't quite gotten to the point where that question Lister has heard for the umpteenth millionth time, and it makes him insane. And I don't think I realized how they slowly built that up to him, because that will be one of my favorite bits of dialogue later to come, is when he explains every piece of toast that he does not want to have. Under the sun.
Yeah, I thought I'd written it down on here. Isn't it this episode where you find out how long they've actually been? It's 18 weeks. I thought I'd written it down on my notes.
Oh, I think you're right. That sounds right. About around 18 weeks.
I'm sure at the end of the episode, it's referenced by Rimmer that it's been 18 weeks since he came, or one of the two, that it's been 18 weeks since he came out of stasis. Spending 18 weeks alone with you, it's referenced that by one of those two towards the end. So I know we talked about it a couple of episodes ago about how long it's actually been. Well, now we know because it's expressly said in this that it's been 18 weeks.
So yeah, it just dropped. It's just, almost, what was it? Almost 4 months. You're getting the fraying at the edges for some people.
Yep.
It's weird. You almost get Rimmer fraying at the edges, and you almost get Lister starting to settle into whatever this life is going to be vibe. Like, he's always aiming to figure out how to get back home or meet other people or whatever, but this does start to settle into this is how he lives now.
Yeah.
The shirt and wiping the food on the shirt and everything.
Rimmer's shirt, not even his own.
Right. Because after Rimmer walks in, he's like, what are you doing? Is he sniffing the cat's books? And he's like, points to his shirt and is like, I'm sure there's a hole. Is it a Shakespeare in there? Who's that? The old timey writer, Wilfred Shakespeare.
Yeah. He's like, you don't need it. Why? Because I'm dead. Well, yeah, dead people don't need clothes. It's so good. I still love the humour in the fact that he's dead. Like, Lister couldn't give a
no.
how much about Rimmer's feelings at all that he's going to bring up the fact that he's dead and just completely play on it.
Well, and that's the part of, that becomes such a staple thing. Like Lister's just kind of accepting the situation. It feels like more so. And we'll have times where that, I think some of that sadness and the reality of his situation comes out. But he definitely is it's almost like, I'm a bit of a slob. And I mean, now I really don't have to put up any pretense. I can just be a slob.
Yep.
And the only person who can complain about it can't do anything about it because they can't touch me. And even though he outranks me, the computer won't do anything that would hurt Dave because it's got to protect him. So
exactly,
he does what he wants.
But I'm gonna go. So we talked about a little bit the cat book that that Lister's reading at the beginning, and he's sniffing. Run, Dick, run. So Tracy's watching it. It's like, okay, so if each one of those words is a smell, what does Dick smell like?
I was reading this amazing one. It starts off, run, Dick, run. Dick has a big red ball.
Yeah, a big ball. A big red ball. Yeah, it's really, really riveting stuff. Yeah.
But you know what? Again, he isn't trying to be funny there. He just delivers that. And I think that's why it works. And even though he kind of says it as a dig to Rimmer, like, what? I'm trying to learn new things. I'm interested in other cultures. Rimmer will say that he is a man of the world, but Lister is actually taking the time to learn this thing about the cat and his people, and Rimmer never would.
No.
He could care less.
It's like even
at all.
The whole bit with Lister being the god, he doesn't want to be. He's actually mortified when you find out the whole story of what happened to the cat people and stuff. But he's interested in it, whereas Rimmer just couldn't give a crap because it doesn't involve him.
Right. It doesn't. And why is it, why does Dave Lister get to be a god and he doesn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Which, this in the realm of our preview or our first two episodes where we were like, man, I can't believe some of the places we went. I didn't even think about these things and how they came up in our conversation. Well, I was taking notes on this episode and I went, I know we're about to go places here. So for context, and I've said it before, I'm from very rural Eastern North Carolina, Halifax, North Carolina. We called it Buzzard Town. I mean, nobody was near me. When my grandparents finally got this little chunk of land about about a mile from us, I had neighbors. Yeah, like it was in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what you know about the Deep South, but very religious, right?
Yes.
So, and even if you weren't, I mean, you're surrounded by everybody that is, right? So seeing this episode as probably around 10 to 12, somewhere in there, hearing people casually be atheist or reject religion was completely mind-blowing to me. And then to go into the showing how Kat's religion is based on a complete misunderstanding of actual events, but then Kat himself is like an atheist who's like, that stuff's stupid. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Yet he is literally standing next to the guy who is the god in that. So he's right and he's wrong all at the same time, and And again, I think as I mentioned in previous episodes, somewhere around this time, I also picked up the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And to me, the take on religion in this episode is very Douglas Adams, you know?
Do you know what? I said this to Tracy when we were watching this episode last night. Now you've referenced Hitchhikers, I can completely see how much Red Dwarf leans on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as a like an inspiration. 100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
The quote from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that came to my mind was when they finally, I think it's a restaurant at the end of the universe. I can't remember, but they get to the hill where the final emblazoned message from God has been burned to this mountain or whatever, and to all of creation. And it's, we apologize for the inconvenience.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Arthur Dent's like, that actually makes me feel comforted. And that vibe is a very similar vibe to this. So it's like, this was very like, I mean, I don't know. You just don't ask questions when you grow up in an area like that. And like, this was very like mind blowing to me. It felt very subversive to me. And I watch it now and it's like, so like, I don't think anybody working on it thought that was a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're making some commentary about like religious orders and that kind of stuff with what they're doing. But like, yeah, for me at the time, I was like, whoa,
yeah, you
can do comedy about this stuff,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but you only need to go back to Monty Python and know how much the British like to make fun of religion.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yes.
It turns out if you grow up on soil where people kept killing each other over religion for a long time, you get some good dark humor going out of that from some of your comedy groups.
Life of Brian, Monty Python is hilarious. It is absolutely, I could tell you an interesting story about that, but this isn't a Monty Python. Yeah, I love the line when Lister professes his God to the cat and he pushes his Crispies towards him and go, turn that into a woman then. Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work like that.
Which, I mean, yes, Dave in the previous episode wants to get a date with Kachansky, but we haven't started to lean into that, like, where are the women at?
Yes.
We got to find some, you know what I mean? Like, we haven't gotten into that.
There's a lot in this episode, actually.
Yes, a lot in this episode. And then I think there's a lot in the very first episode of the next season. But there's definitely a lot of that. And the delivery, well, that whole scene with Kat, where he's talking about the religious book and everything. And, oh yeah, those are pictures. See, in some of our books, you know, we have the words, then you have pictures of what the words are. He's like, yeah, we got that too. But this whole scene, that is where you go, this is the Cat's normal character. Yeah. I mean, when he's not like in a reflexive acting like a cat moment, but like when he's actually having a conversation and sitting there and talking with someone. And of course, he's very self-centered, you know, as we get to a later conversation that he has with one of his own people and kind of only pays attention to himself. But it's not like List, or it's not like Rimmer, because it's just, that's how cats are.
Yeah. I've just found where that 18 weeks thing is. It's in the trivia. I knew I'd put it somewhere.
Of course. As you said, we'll bounce around the trivia where it goes.
But yeah, it's you can see Cat becoming more of a part of the crew now rather than just being this random. And obviously you've got to assume that since they came out of stasis as well, he's been bouncing between the other cat person and Rimmer and Lister. And so
it's true, he doesn't live with them yet. We keep seeing him appear through the ducts.
Yes.
Hang out for a while and then leave to go do something secret, as he says.
And then obviously what happens at the end of this is probably the point in his life where he's like, right, I need to join this group now because that other part of my life now doesn't exist anymore. I mean, anybody listening to this should know. So yeah, the other cat person obviously dies. So at that point, he hasn't got those two split groups to go between.
Yeah, that's our A plot is Lister finding out that his the way he took care of Frankenstein, his cat, became the course of a religion, and they changed his name from Lister to Cloister, and and Fiji. I forget what Fiji got changed to, but all of Lister's dreams and the holy book that was the holy words that were his laundry list.
Oh God! And that
was in there.
The hot dog shop selling hot dogs and savory donuts with the stupid hats with the arrows on. It's like this stupid line where it's like, oh well, they had a holy war over whether the hat should have been red or blue, and he's like, that's crazy. I know it is, isn't it? They were meant to be green.
They were meant to be great. Yes.
And that's again that British humour, exactly what you say you love. That's that. No, it's a chicken joke again, isn't it?
Yep, and he just nails it. Like it's delivered so.
Yeah. Not like a punchline. It's just
so
delivered.
hard not to talk about future jokes, but there is another one that I know will be a future line that talks about the Flintstones. Okay. And it's one of his deliveries that is a very similar thing that I can't wait till we get to.
Yeah, you can see how much they've settled into it by this episode now, that they're not, like, he doesn't say it like a punchline, he just says it matter-of-factly. Well, they were supposed to be green. I can't remember, there's a line in this as well when Holly's messed... Oh, it's the garbage pod, isn't it? When they figure out it's a garbage pod.
And you know what I'd forgotten? Is how fast they figure that out.
Yes.
That literally the pod appears, you almost feel like because of how we've dealt with the cat prior, that this whole cat religion thing might be over, and the plot of the show is going to be about this pod that they found. And Rimmer super cares. I love how he's like, we got to be in quarantine. And then Lister just goes in and is like, whatever, does his whole against the wall, like, and he's dying and blows his face, the raspberries like on the wall of where the pod is. And Rimmer cares so much. In the beginning, he doesn't, because they just assume it's a rock, because that's all they say Holly ever finds. And then it turns out to be a pod.
Because Rimmer's obsessed with finding aliens.
Yeah, obsessed with finding... Again, all leads to... You think, well, is this something like was he a nerd about this kind of thing? Did he want to do it? And you're like, no, he just wants to be important and be the first. I think it's just be the first person that met an alien. That's all.
He wants to find a beautiful alien blonde with 6 breasts.
Yes. Can you imagine that?
Can you imagine making love to a woman with 6 breasts? Can you imagine making love to a woman?
God, Chris Berry's so great. I mean, that again. This show, we keep saying it, but I'm like, ugh, you feel it. You can feel the crystallization of like how these performances are gonna be. Like, it's so cool watching how much they change and get better.
Yeah.
And just, I obviously I don't know the production story. They usually do one episode at a time. But they're so quickly getting good at this.
It is as well, because the jokes, you can kind of see them coming. There's one in, I think it's the second episode, when Lister thinks he's going to get blown up and die. And it's like, I'm never going to get to do all those things I've always wanted to do. I'm never going to get to read a book. And you're like, it's coming, and it's such a simple joke, but it's funny anyway. And that's this one. Imagine getting chance to make love to a woman with 6 breasts. Imagine getting chance to make love to a woman. And you're just like, you'd see it coming, but it doesn't stop it being any funnier than it is.
No, it's totally brilliant. And I mean, a good part of that too is just Chris Berry's delivery. He's flipping phenomenal.
Yeah, but then that's what I'm saying, when Lister goes back in and he's like, hold on. And he's like, give me an R, give me an E, give me a red dwarf garbage pod. Why didn't you tell him, Holly? Well, it's a laugh, isn't it? And it's just that deadpan, well, it's a laugh, isn't it, from Holly that makes me just chuckle so much.
I definitely wrote that in my... one of my favorite lines bit.
Yeah, I love his deadpan delivery. It's so, and that goes to that, like, none of his jokes are punchlines because they're delivered so flat.
But they hit so hard.
Yes.
And it is wild to think this version of Holly will take a hiatus at some point and is gone longer than he's there, and then people go bananas when he comes back. And I think it's for this kind of delivery.
Yeah, it's weird when you said on the last episode how soon he goes away. I didn't realize it was that soon.
Yeah, it's fast.
And then, like, what? It just, because he's such a big part of it. And then you think he's only part of it for like 3 seasons. And then obviously he comes back later on. It's just it shows you how good he is then. That Holly is the one, at least I associate with the ship's computer more than his replacement.
Oh, God, we're gonna get some good Holly episodes coming up. I was looking at this episode list for season 2 and going,
I know.
Right.
There's one very specifically in there, and Holly's not even in it that much, but it's very Holly centric.
Yes. Oh, that's true. He's not really, but it is very Holly centric. Was that your favorite line? The deadpan of Holly?
Probably,
because you said you had a line in particular earlier in the pod.
Yes. So we'll get to it because it's later on.
Okay. Later.
Yeah.
Because so that happens. We know it's weird because it takes the sales for the viewer out of that story completely. It's over. It's just gonna be a punchline now. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even matter to be a punchline. I like one of the trivia things you got in here with the reference to Aliens, which the 4K of Aliens just dropped, the second film. So I just rewatched that the other day. but I think you put that on here, right? With watch out, a squiggly, slimy thing will get stuck to your face, in the nod to, well, I guess Aliens was 86. So that would have been the more recent one right next to the Red Dwarf, episode coming out. But, iconic sci-fi thing. So you can't not think of it. I love that he remembers that, but it's Wilfred Shakespeare.
Yes.
Makes me very happy.
Because apparently when Lister was sliding down the glass, blowing the big raspberry on the window, apparently he completely ad-libbed all of that.
I can see that. That checks out. And actually, well, I think it's a little bit later scene. So we kind of go from this back to, this is where Lister starts to connect into what's going on with the cat.
Yeah.
And goes looking for the cat. And what's really wild is we cut to the cat and this old priest cat who is old and dying down below in the ship's hold. And Lister's out looking for him and complaining, trying to find the cat. And they discover this place where it's, you don't really get a glimpse of the society of the cats, but there's this one room somewhere near, a bottom part of the ship.
I think Holly says it's, because I lost him something like Portal 28 or wherever. He's gone down, and Lister says, I think he's gone. So he's gone down in the cargo hold then. That's
right. So that's where he's hanging out at. And the priest is complaining about how, his religion was a lie. There's no such thing. Cloister's not there. Take my hat and burn it, whatever. And we get to the heart of gold part of Lister. He hates, that this is the case. And I guess I should back up a little bit, because when he gets the full story of all the things that happened, he goes back to that pod room with Rimmer, and he's trying to have a heart-to-heart with Rimmer about, this sucks, dude. People killed themselves because of I got put in a stasis pod. It's not his fault, but he feels like it's his fault. And religious wars got created. Stuff that this anarchist guy totally probably has complained about and said, this is why religion stinks. This is why government stink, yada, yada. And yet he inadvertently creates it, which, as we go down our seasons, is a theme that will come back for Mr. Lister, where he ends up continues to become things that he probably wouldn't like or doesn't want to be.
Yeah.
And Rimmer doesn't care. I love how mad he gets in that scene. He's like, shut up, like you were saying. It just doesn't, I'm trying to focus on this. And that, by the way, is where the hologram fails. And he points at the, plexiglass panel that's in front of the pod. And you totally, especially my surround sound here, dink, his finger hits the piece in front of it. And this is where I have some of my favorite lines, where he's like, all I care about are the Quagars.
Oh, see, that's it. That was mine. I love, because Lister says something about, the Quagars, and he's like, no, it's Quagars. I love how he delivers that. It's so funny.
Quagars. It's got 2 A's.
Yeah.
And he says it like it's so important, and then says, it's a word I just made up. It's
because that's when Lister's telling him about, when he's telling him about all the holy wars and stuff, and then Rimmer just loses the plot. And I've actually got the script where it's like, look, I'm sick of hearing about these stupid cats. My concerns are slightly more meaningful than what coloured stupid smegging cardboard hat I'm wearing. I'm trying to decipher this. This is science, laddie. You can smirk, Lister, but I believe the Quagars. And the thing is, I think Lister's smirk is real. I don't think he expected Chris Barry to dial it up to 11, and I think he's actually struggling to not lose it at that point. It's so good. That's he plays that losing his temper with Lister so well,
and he does lose it. I mean, it's like he's in a stage play. I mean, he gets so angry, and it's just, and I like it because it is sort of a first moment of Lister goes to this other human being that's on the ship to man, I gotta talk, and he gets nowhere with it because all Rimmer wants is that. Plus, like you said, the idea that Lister is thought of as a cat, or a god, even though it's in a ridiculous fashion, he doesn't care. It's 2 A's. It's a word I just made up.
Quagars. Yeah. I love it. Yes, I did have that written down. That was the line.
I didn't know how far. I thought maybe your favorite line was even further down.
It's funny when they're talking about, Lister's talking about all the planets, because we've never seen aliens, and all the planets giving Earth a wide berth because, oh, don't go near Earth, it's got human beings. I love that. It's like we're a plague.
That explanation. And I love how that's an early thing that they decided the only creatures will be something, maybe it could look like an alien, but it would be a genetically modified something from Earth. Like it was always tied to Earth, humans.
Because it would have been so easy for them to have gone down that route of a way to introduce easy characters every episode, is just have a new alien that they came across.
Yeah, I like that and on one hand, it's almost a budget thing. You can never do alien makeup. That's nice. But it also is like, I don't know, it's giving you that sort of restriction that makes you get creative. You know, it's funny. I feel like this is in a lineage of, I don't know if you are a Star Trek fan, but the animated cartoon Lower Decks that is on Paramount Plus is amazing. And it's like Red Dwarf in space in the sense that this is following the ensigns on a Star Trek Enterprise type ship who are all the peons that you never see in the show. All right. And there is it rooted heavily in the Star Trek universe, but there's this vibe of, in sci-fi, everything was like pristine and new and clean and the future. Then Star Wars comes along and it's like, I'm going to make a future or another world that looks real dirty and lived in, and it's like, it kind of changes things. And you can kind of see like, that's where Red Dwarf goes off on. They kind of do the Star Wars aesthetic of a very lived in, not clean, future. And then, but that being said, the Star Trek Lower Deck show sort of postulates like, well, the nice, clean, and pristine you see is because you always follow the officers up on the upper deck, right?
Right.
And so, I love the show. It's brilliant. And of course, they do aliens because it's Star Trek. But like, I watch it and go, for sure, there is some writer on this show that I could get up with. But hey, man, you ever seen Red Dwarf? Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's just some similarity about being in confined quarters alone with these people constantly. Even in that case, the ship's full of people, but you're only working with like this small group, right? So you're driving each other nuts, kind of a thing. But you are forging friendships, and so I do love that there's this moment where, is this going to happen? Are we going to see a little humanity between Lister and Reverend? It's not at all.
No, not at all. And like, do not come to me with your real life problems. I'm talking about aliens here. Yeah, and that comes into one of my favorite episode of all time in the next season is very much rooted on Rimmer's love of aliens, without a doubt.
Oh, I don't remember offhand. I can't wait till we get to that.
Yeah, there's something you kind of brought up there. It's weird. So obviously this was filmed in front of a live studio audience. So you've got like their bunk room is quite a major part of it. The bridge in the ship. But then you look at, so when Lister goes to find the cat, those kind of gantry looking areas that are between areas, they don't look like a set. That looks like a real, like, metal structures. If you watch there's always like there's a gantry and a set of steps that go down.
I feel like I saw an interview where it's some building, obviously, kind of boiler room kind of vibe.
That's what it looks like.
That they would use, and I don't know if it's the same building, but it pops up, and they continue to use something like that whenever they traverse through the ship.
Yeah,
where it's clearly not, one of the main set pieces. But this one has two new set pieces. The garbage pod area, which I don't think we ever see again. And then, or I guess technically it's the quarantine area where the garbage pod is. And then the other is the room that the cats, the priest is in. And I love that this is our first time of Lister being the hero.
Yeah.
Because he hears the old priest talking about how his religion was stupid and Cloister was never there and he's wasted his whole life. And even though Lister knows it's all a big misunderstanding and it means nothing, it means something to this guy. And he busts the door open. I love that, like, backlit music.
And then he goes to hit Cat with that big sausage as well. Like, he holds it up like he's going to hit Cat if he doesn't go along with him.
Yeah, and he's wearing the little donut hat or whatever, like, that he finds outside, and he totally just plays along and lets this guy have his final moments where he gets to, like, commune with Cloister the Stupid before he finally passes away. And it's that obviously in the very first episode, you've got this dude's a slob. He's kind of maybe not a jerk, but just doesn't care about anything. Oh, but he cares about that cat, and he gets himself in trouble over a cat, right? Yeah. And in this, like, he steps up and decides to become the hero. And this is like a reoccurring theme. And I like that the show never makes him like a hero,
yeah,
but he will have these moments.
Yeah.
And it's fun because later episodes will play on the fact that you like to think you're a moral person, but yeah, I mean, like, it plays with, you know, this idea of his morality, because he and sometimes doesn't kind of feel like he has any, then he does. So this is another one of those like cornerstones. And I guess what's wild to me, we're 4 episodes in, and they really did, for as much as they're still trying to, like, you know, get their feet under themselves for how the show's going to operate, man, they really solidify so much of what will become a core piece of how it will go. Because sometimes, you know, he just wants to be cool or whatever, but that hero moment will come back again and again.
Yeah, and what I love about this is it goes off to kind of what we've talked about as well. The guy who plays the cat priest plays that entirely straight.
He might as well be in a Shakespeare play.
Yeah, exactly. Like when he thinks because he gives Cat his hat to burn because he doesn't believe it, and then when he finds out, obviously, Cloister the Stupid's real, and he's like devastated that he burnt his hat, and then Cat obviously gives it to Lister, and Lister gives him it back, but he plays that part so earnest, and I think that's look, I'm going to go at something that you and I know very well, Blake, with Halloween Horror Nights. And you're going to go, how the hell am I going to break Halloween Horror Nights into Red Dwarf at this point? It's like you always need a comedy house. If you go through all those houses and it's scare, you become immune to it, to be fair. I'm completely immune to it anyway. But you know what I mean? The average person, you need that house in the middle that isn't the same as all the rest, just to sow that seed of doubt. And this is the same thing. You need those characters in it, or at least moments with characters that play it straight, so that when the comedy happens, it stands out and it's funnier. And I think that's what the priest does in this. It allows Cat to be funnier, and it allows Lister to be funnier because he's playing it straight. That's why I think a lot of the time that Holly works well, that he plays it straight, it allows the others to be the comedians and he plays the straight man, and then vice versa. And I think that's what makes a lot of the comedy in Red Dwarf work so well, because it's not just a dumb comedy where everybody's trying to be funny.
Right. And I think, you know, in a season after next, we get a character who is super animated, but very earnest. And I think it's one of the reasons that it makes the comedy start to elevate, because he's so earnest about the most ridiculous things. Yeah,
that changes.
And whenever whenever someone does that, it elevates. So this guy's being so earnest about his religion. Yeah. And then here comes Dave Lister wearing a golden donut, holding a golden hot dog, right? It's flipping brilliant. And it is the kind of like, Dave's got a heart of gold thing that gets set up there and kind of never goes away, you know, and I just love it. It's such a cool episode. I mean, I'll tell you my rating right now because we're kind of talking about it, but I gave it like a very high 8 in the sense that, man, the pacing, you really feel like this springboard on. Like if you, like I did, came into the second and third season watching it and then watched the first couple episodes, you're like, oh, this feels different.
Yeah.
But if you did that and then went to this episode, I don't think you'd feel that way. It's very much feeling like, you know, and I also like that, again, in a time where we were used to watching sitcoms and stuff that don't have a continuing story. It's odd to have a sitcom where there are continuing stories, like not in a Doctor Who current kind of way where there's like an overall thread but like important moments that happen for people stay.
Yes.
Like those. Well, actually, to use a Doctor Who term, the fixed points in time that cannot be changed, right? There are these little fixed points that are like, this will never go away. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, to go off the cat priest, I've got a little bit of trivia there. That if you noticed, he has one white hand and one black hand, which according to the DVD liner notes is because and I love this, that they actually named the species Felis sapiens, just to show us, like cats do, can have different patches of colour on them. And that's a little cool attention to detail, that if he hadn't have been Like, if he didn't have one white hand and one black hand, you wouldn't have batted an eyelid, you wouldn't have noticed, you wouldn't have gone, hang on, that's weird. But the fact that he doesn't seem weird. It's just that little nod that just elevates it above what it could have been.
It's funny. I didn't the first go notice it, and this time watching with my wife, I went, "Wait, is he like a calico cat or something? Does he have a different color hand?" Yeah, and so that's why I love. Well, you know me coming from those Halloween Horror Night worlds. Yeah. I love those little details. The little details like just make it so good. It stands out so well.
I love that the cat Bible has it's not the 10 commandments. There's like five commandments. And it's like, I've already broke 4 of them. I would have broke all 5 of them, but there's no sheep on board. And you're like, whoa, what is that 5th one then? Like, it doesn't tell you, and it allows you to go and make the joke of what that is.
So again, you got to go back and read the novel, because the novel kind of sets up that Dave and Rimmer have a life a little bit prior to getting on Red Dwarf. Or they're going to go and like they're on, I guess it's Titan or whatever. And Rimmer's looking for Lister, and he runs past genetically modified, sex workers, for lack of a better term. Okay. And one of them is genetically modified sex worker Sheep, who looks over its shoulder and looks at him flirtatiously.
Oh, wow.
They're like, they have something for everyone.
Brilliant.
So you got to read that. Maybe that's after all this is all said and done. Like definitely. You said, we should do the book.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I love when it's the exclamations that Rimmer uses a lot. Is this the episode where he's going, okay, and it's like, okay is not, are you threatening me? Okay. Oh, no. Is that this one?
No, that is the prior episode about that's what makes him decide he's gonna go try to outrank Rimmer.
Yes.
Rimmer. But delivered very earnestly. He looks kind of scared. Okay, Rimmer?
Yeah.
Okay. You're like, yeah. Like,
and then he walks away and he's like,
good.
Bastard. Like we all would. I love that. So we're going to retroactively talk that one. But in this one, it says, oh, vomitization. And I love that. I love Rimmer's just his exclamations at the end of things like this. Instead of saying, oh, bull or whatever, it's like, oh, vomitization is hilarious.
And then, but in his moment, what's funny is like, in trying to sound important and to elucidate well, he overdoes it, and you're like, you just sound like more of a prat.
Yeah.
The way you're insulting people. But when he honestly does have a real good one, it's that moment when he's having his freak out over the alien and he's like, life's a bitch, now smeg off. And it's the most real burn that I think he ever has in the whole show. Like, except for one at the end of season 7, maybe. But like, it's the most real burn that I just love it. Like, it's the best. Smeg off. Like, so good.
Yeah, it is. It's like the bit in this when he's dictating the letter to Holly, and it's like, I can't remember what the letter is, but it's like something, comma, and then he's like putting commas after like every word and stuff. It's like to the aliens. He's like, well, hopefully they can teach you about your punctuation.
By the way, read a book called Eat, Shoots, and Leaves. Very, very good. If you want a very comedic, funny book about grammar, sounds weird, very funny.
I'm sure my wife's read it. She's doing her English literature degree.
Oh, I bet she is familiar with it. If she hasn't read it, I bet she's heard of that book.
Yeah, without a doubt.
It comes with stickers of apostrophes, large apostrophes and commas that you can go around putting on signs to correct people's bad use of those things. Yeah. I do love, as we approach the end, where, as I said, early on, the pod is removed from mystery. We know it's a garbage pod.
Yeah.
And clearly, at some point, there's going to be egg on Rimmer's face. Like, that joke is done. It's set up. But we delve so far into the cat thing, and even though it's kind of ridiculous, it's a sweet, honest moment at the end when the priest dies, and he feels like he dies a fulfilled life because he gets to meet Cloister. And then we go back to the garbage pod. You're almost like, oh, right.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, we have to do this. And almost Rimmer is, or Lister is too, like, what, whatever. But goes in and, pulls out that rotten, like, rotisserie chicken.
Carcass, yeah. It must be a Quagar warrior. They looked a lot like a rotisserie chicken.
Yeah. and then, is that the break straight into
that's the end, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And then you get the final line. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant.
They're talking about funny things that happen nowadays that are no big deal. Like, stuff after the credits is such a normal thing.
Yes.
Now. I remember being a kid, and the joke that happens during the credits surprising me, because I was like, I didn't know you could do that. I thought the rules were the show was over.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And I lost it the first time I heard it again on this. I had totally forgotten about it.
I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Like you say that they gave away that punchline so early on.
Yeah, like it didn't matter.
But I think that was half the joke, wasn't it? That you were in, like when Lister says, why are you not telling him, Holly? And he's just like, oh well, it's a laugh, isn't it? And it's like it's bringing you into the joke then, that we all know it's not, and yet it's funny for all of us watching Rimmer get so excited over it that when he finds out it's not, it's even funnier.
What was my initial line at the very beginning of this episode? That in this episode we discover this episode solidifies nothing is funnier than Rimmer's hopes and desires being dashed.
It's true.
And yeah, that when I wrote that, I didn't even think about that in the way that you put it.
Yeah, because we're brought into the joke so early on that we're part of the joke at that point.
You know, we hear the word immersive too much, but it is like an immersive in the sense that you're brought in with the joke with the crew.
Which they could have left it till right at the end and you find out it's a garbage pod the same time Rimmer does. But by doing what they did, we're all in on it.
While I know that it's obviously they did it this way, because it's funny this way if you have Lister get stuck with the guy that he hated most. That's instant comedy. But in some way, the show does go out of its way to make sure that it is actually true. Holly did pick the best person to keep Dave sane because this kind of stuff keeps him going.
Yes.
Like completely keeps him going. And then he figures that out.
Oh my God. They're just so good together. Chris Barry and Craig Charles, they're just so good together.
Well, and you had sent me their recent reunion last weekend on stage in Liverpool at a con.
Well, when this episode comes out, it won't have been last weekend, but as we're recording it, yes, it was last weekend.
Fair enough. I forgive that. I'm so used to doing a weekly show about footy that I forget.
Yeah.
But it's seeing them together, how quickly they all just like fell into their roles. Like the way they are with each other. You're like, oh man, this is why you guys are so good together.
Yeah.
Like they just like click. My favorite thing in that might be the way that in the show, Dave Lister does nothing but praise Crichton for the most part. Like he just loves Crichton, as we'll get to that character later. But in that Liverpool thing, he's just ragging him the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh God, so good, so good.
So I was going to give this quite a low ranking. Because I was just like, it's kind of a nothing episode, really. Like, the story's a bit kind of It's funny. Like, it has some of the funniest scenes in it. But the more we've talked about it and the more you look at, like you said, that law that is there right from the start and then keeps showing up through the rest of it, of Cloyster being cat god, Lister being cat god, and then showing Rimmer's just over need for finding aliens. I think I'm going to give it an 8. Actually, it's a really good episode because that's funny, where I was at, and the story's pretty good in the. I think it's that. So you talked about. I think it was on episode 1 where we talked about taking the episode as it is and not as part of the whole, which is difficult because we know the series so well.
Well, but because you're trying to, and I did this on episode 3. I said I was going to rate it in as like a 6 or a 7, and I ended up kind of going to an 8 because of Kachansky and how well it establishes certain things. And it is hard. I'm kind of breaking my own rule. I was trying, and that's why I said when I watch these, I tend to write all my notes on like the second or third viewing. But after the first viewing, I go ahead and punch in my initial score, and I wrote the 8, better pacing, and feels like it fits in it fits in what is going to come later. Like I feel the show as I know it. And again, this is my perspective. I started somewhere probably in the middle of the second season with these for when I caught them being aired. Cause I don't think I caught this at 8. I think I was like 10 or 11, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Which would have been like the second and third seasons, but it is hard. It's hard to divorce it from it.
It is.
It was almost easier in the first 2 episodes because they feel less a part of what's to come.
Yes.
Than how quickly, and we're only on 4.
Yeah. How quickly you're immersed in everything Red Dwarf.
And we've done 2 back-to-back, as you said, that are very in 3 and 4, much more sitcom.
Yeah.
So again, smart that second one went the weird sci-fi route.
Absolutely.
And so that you go, anything could happen, which again is weird that they cut the legs out from the garbage pod because they've set up anything could happen. So it is an interesting choice to go, no, we're going to pull you in on the joke and let you watch him spin Quagga.
Because it could have been anything. Yeah, you're right. It could have been anything in that garbage pod. If we wouldn't have known that it was a garbage pod, just a pod, after episode 2, it could have been anything in there because we've seen that we've got time travel and all the rest of this weird crap going on. Yeah,
Lee, how in the world, when we were naming this podcast, did we not think of Smegging Garbage Pod?
Yeah, we should have done. That would have been perfect.
Dang it.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at the line right now. Oh my God, I can't believe that never occurred to me.
Yeah, it is I think I'm going to give it a solid 8. I think it's a really good episode. And it just, you're really starting to see that the foundations have been built and we're now getting those first layers of bricks built for what the show's going to be moving forward, without a doubt.
And, I don't think we really talked about it in the first episode, but man, do I love this intro. This like beautifully good, classic, real model 80s filmmaking shot of the giant red dwarf ship that starts on this dude painting it in space.
Yeah.
Like immediately establishing what a crap job. And then to pan back and go on this cool, majestic looking thing that you would see in a Star Trek or a Star Wars movie. Like, look at this. And to juxtapose it with like the dude out there who's like the equivalent of like, I don't know, Pirate Days, like scraping the barnacles off the ship, like, and it really struck me today when that intro came on. I was like, man, I love that. It's such a good, obviously they filmed that earlier because that took work, right? Like how majestic that shot is just lets you know how well they understood what this show needed to be.
Yeah, because it feels, if you catch that, just that intro first off, not knowing anything else about the show, you're like, okay, this is, it's got a bit of production value there. The ship looks great, and then what you're watching is completely different. And then even again, you get that initial scroll from Holly, and until the punchline, it could feel like a Star Trek or like a whatever. It could have felt something that was meant to be serious until the punchline.
I think the choice of no aliens leans into that too. Yeah. They weirdly keep a lot of things as real as they can and then get as nuts as they can within that realm that they've created.
And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. By grounding it allows the ridiculous comedy to work.
Absolutely.
Because I think if they went ridiculous, you'd just go, this is ridiculous.
I just want to, I'm ready to go watch the next two episodes right now.
And I know what the next two are, and they're so good.
They are.
I can't wait.
It's been killing me. I've been staring at them just like, oh, God, I want to watch these really bad. I almost gave it the other night. I was like, no. I want to wait till I get done with these because I don't want to cross-contaminate my brain.
Yeah.
Because clearly, already 4 episodes in, it has been hard for us to track because, and I think it gets easier as it goes, because it usually is around the cat. The way this show is broken up into little segments almost, just as you were confusing, is this the threat with Lister, okay, Rima?
Yeah.
It like, I don't, also because they get a little bit more money, so the scenery changes a little bit per episode. So I think that's the other thing too with this.
Yeah. It's
like living in Florida like I used to. I go back and look at pictures. If my phone didn't tell me what the date was, I don't know, is that December? Is it April? Who can say? You kids all looks the same. It's Florida, right? The season never changes. So it is been difficult at times to go, wait. I almost said something to you in this episode and went, that was the second episode.
Yeah. It's weird. I think that's a positive, though. I think that shows how quickly it did settle in. Actually, the one thing I wanted to bring up when we talked about timing, and we've talked a lot about some of the jokes so far being stretched out where they could have been tightened up.
Yes.
And there's one you brought up in the last episode that is in this one, and we haven't brought it back up, and that's the cat with the food machine. Now, that is a long section, but it works perfectly. So he's like, fish. Today's fish is trout a la creme. Fish. Today's fish is trout a la creme. Fish. Today's fish is trout a la creme. Fish. And it keeps going 7 times.
They always say comedies in threes. And you could end after that third one. But after he gets to the fifth one, it gets funny again.
Yeah.
Like, and I love his like eating too much, and then his whole I gotta go do something secret. Runs away. And in those moments, he's still not part of the crew, So it's funny that we're saying he's much more part of the episode in this one, but he still has moments that could have been in a different episode. Like that bit didn't have to be in this one.
But it's like, that's a complete cat thing. I suppose when you look at it, that he's in and out is exactly a cat thing. Cats just turn up when they want something or whatever, and then they disappear. So that actually works. I wonder if that was a conscious thing or whether it is what we've talked about of them.
It's
just
gotta
not
be right.
Quite sure of where to put him in. Whereas like, this is what a cat would do.
I think it's got to be because even the way he comes in, like his air duct, it opens like a freaking cat door.
Yeah,
I mean, like that has to be what they were thinking.
And he forward rolls out, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just leave cats like to have their little litter box somewhere that they can't be seen, and like it just. Obviously, the guys working on it have cats.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and this is all about his shiny things. Was both lots of shiny things in this one?
Oh,
was that the last one?
I wrote this down too. Another little thing
because
that
there was the yo-yo, wasn't there?
Yes, the yo-yo was such a cat moment.
Is that this one or was that the third one?
It's this one. I wrote it in this one. It's cat stuff like the yo-yo bit. So it's not. I wrote they're those are one of those little cornerstones of how the cat's going to be written later. They've done cat things. The actual yo-yo going, whoa, is stuff you've seen him before, but it's the conversation leading into it to go, check it out. It's two things. Yeah. Up here, you hang it this way, and it's this bit. And then you turn it around, and here's the really clever part. And it does, you know what I mean? You turn it, and that just makes me think of those, well, that's what a crimp and another damn fine plan kind of moments that will come later, But that bit of dialogue where and if you think about it, the cloister conversation are the first times he really gets dialogue that goes somewhere with people, and that moment feels like, oh, that's the cat that we'll start seeing full scenes with later,
It's brilliant. I love that. It's like, I've been investigating this, investigating that. Ah, good. But you can't have my shiny thing. It's like, it's a yo-yo, you modo.
You modo, that's right. Is that a reference to anything?
God knows. It's just another rimmerism.
I love it.
Brilliant. Cool.
Lee, does that get us to the end? Does that wrap us up?
I think so. I think we've established this one. Of course, we're going to wrap up this show. We will be back in. I think we're generally doing these every 2 weeks. I think at this point, every first and third Monday. So make sure you go and you watch the next episode, which Bill will tell you about in a minute. But before then, make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Dwarf Memory, and Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called. They've decided now at Dwarf_Memory for any show updates or stuff like that.
And email us comments and thoughts to dwarfmemory@gmail.com. And on the next episode, we're going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 5, Confidence and Paranoia. It's the end of the pod. It's the end of the smegging pod!